Hi, I'm Zach Buckle, and welcome back to the Farm Table West YouTube channel. So, winter harvesting might be something you're not used to hearing about in the context of vegetables in a garden or a greenhouse or anything like that. But it is actually possible, even in a place like Wyoming where we're at, where we're in zone 4B, and it gets down to negative 20 every winter here pretty much reliably. So there's a lot of tricks to winter growing that I'm still learning myself. Because a lot of it I find is dependent on your experience, and you have to take good notes on when your planting dates were, what kind of protection you gave the plants during the cold. It takes some experience, and I'm only 3 years into it, but I have learned a lot in those 3 years, and this year we've done better than ever. So today what I want to share with you are 5 crops that I've found are the most reliable to grow and produce food for you through a below zero winter in a greenhouse without any extra heat. And the way we do that is basically just plant things in a greenhouse like this, or even a low tunnel, and you cover the crops with this row cover, which is basically just a frost blanket, and you double or triple layer the crops when it gets extremely cold, like negative 20. And you don't have to do that every day. You just have to do that in serious blasts of cold where it's going to be cold for a few weeks or something like that. And then when you get a warmer period, you let the plants breathe and they grow more in the winter. And I'm finding that the crops are incredibly tough and resilient, and they do grow for you in the winter. And any kind of greens in the wintertime are extremely welcome in my book. And we're not going to just go over greens today. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could do in your garden with a low tunnel, or if you have a greenhouse. So let's show you the crops. So the 5th best vegetable to grow through a below zero winter is miner's lettuce. That's what this weird stuff is. It's also known as Claytonia, but miner's lettuce basically just sounds cooler. This plant is native to the Rocky Mountains, which is basically where I live here in Wyoming. In fact, foragers around here have actually seen this growing in the mountains. So it's kind of cool to have a plant that's actually native to the area that I live in, at least. But you can grow this all over America and Europe, anywhere. And it's this weird looking green that grows kind of like an octopus and tastes a lot like lettuce. It really does. It tastes like lettuce or like a watercress or something like that. It's got a unique flavor, but I think it's the most lettucey flavor of any of the winter greens. And it's actually one of my personal favorites. There are some tricks to growing it. There's a lot of issues with rotting the leaves because it gets so thick. This isn't even really full thickness. I can get it a lot thicker, but didn't get this crop quite perfect. But they taste incredible. I mean, when it's January and below freezing out all day for weeks, and you're eating this in a salad, you're gonna have a good time because you probably haven't had anything that fresh since October or something. It's just incredible, and it's extremely cold hardy. We're in one of these caterpillar tunnels, which is not as protective as a real high tunnel, and all I'm doing is the row cover stuff, and it's working great. Other than some leaf rot issues, it's fine. We're going to be harvesting this the next 2 months, no problem. And then the coolest thing about this crop is what happens in March. When it goes to seed, it starts to flower and creates this beautiful white flower that is something you should pay for in a flower bunch or something. It's incredible. There's a little white flower that shows up in the middle of these leaves, every single one of them. And it tastes great. It doesn't really taste different at all. It just looks 10 times more beautiful. And that'll start happening probably late February, March, and we'll be selling them like that. But it's just amazing to have on your dinner plate in March when there's really not a lot of food coming fresh from anywhere, at least in the northern climates like us. So highly recommend you try this. You can buy seeds for this at Johnny's, because I know it's kind of hard to find seeds sometimes for this particular crop, and the seeds are ridiculously tiny, but that doesn't really matter. You just get a feel for, throwing them in the ground and making sure they grow and germinate. And once they're growing and you get them mature by the last 10-hour day, you're going to have a really good time all winter. I can't wait to get better at growing this in the future because I'm still learning to grow it on a big scale. But we've probably got 50 pounds of it behind me just for the next couple weeks, and then once it regrows, God knows how much we're going to get. So this is probably my favorite, to be honest, but I put it at the bottom of the list because there is some tricks to it. It's a little harder to grow than the other ones, but highly recommend you try it. It looks really different. It's a lot of fun, and you should grow it. So the fourth crop you could harvest through a below zero winter is Tokyo Bacana. That's what you see here. This stuff grows faster than anything I've ever seen in the wintertime. It almost grows too fast, which you can see here. These leaves are almost as big as my hand, which is a little too big for salad. But the point is, you can harvest this and it'll regrow many, many times in the winter, no matter how cold it is. So this stuff is also amazing because it tastes like Napa cabbage. It's a lot better than lettuce in my opinion, but it's way cold hardier, and that's what you want with winter greens. So as you can see, these ones are a little beat up because we've had some below zero already, and the leaves are so big that the moisture underneath is kind of rotting some of the leaves. But if you harvest it when the leaves are small, they're going to have a lot less problems like that. And if you water it only once at the very beginning of the winter and don't water it at all, that'll give you a better chance of not having leaves rot. But almost none of this has real frost damage on it. This is just incredibly tough. And again, we did it. This is an unheated high tunnel greenhouse. There's nothing special going on other than putting on this row cover, which is really cheap. Put on a single layer when it's below 20 maybe outside, and then double layer it when it gets down to like 15, and then another triple layer when it gets to below zero, and you'll be so amazed at how well this stuff will survive that. And then when it's sunny like this, you can start to take them off and let them grow and have an abundance of winter salad. And just to give you some perspective on how fast this Tokyo Bacana grows, this bed was harvested back in November. It's now January. It has grown back to the point where it's almost ready to harvest again. We'll be ready to harvest this for sure in February, if not earlier. All depends on how cold the next couple weeks are. But this is what I mean when I say you can get 2 to 3 cuts out of this throughout the entire winter. The third crop you can grow through a below zero winter is Tsoy. That's what you see on either side of me here. Tsoy is an Asian green that's a lot like spinach, but it is a brassica. So it tastes kind of like a mustardy brassica, almost similar to Tokyo Bacana or a mustard green, but with a slight more spinachy flavor. A lot of these greens really have a unique flavor that you're never going to taste in any kind of greens you get from the store. But these are bomb-proof, almost as tough as spinach. And you also get this sort of broccoli type crop in the spring. When they bolt and go to seed, they'll start flowering, and you can harvest that and almost eat it like broccolini. But it's another great green to add to your arsenal. It will survive below zero, no problem. You'll see sometimes you get yellow leaves like this, but you know, if you're growing just a couple plants in your garden, you'll be able to pick around those really easily, and it'll keep growing just like everything else. Again, this bed was harvested actually in December mostly, and it's still growing again. And we're going to get another beautiful crop of greens in February, and probably another crop of the flowers in March, or yeah, something like that. So these are a great green to grow in your winter garden that you probably haven't heard about. So highly recommend you try Tsoy. So the second best crop you can harvest through a below zero winter is carrots. So it's not a salad green like all the other ones. These carrots have been through below zero already, and I'm sure we're going to get close to -20 in the next couple weeks. And it's January now. This ground has been frozen and thawed many, many times. We're in a caterpillar tunnel right now, which means it's actually less protected than a real high tunnel like our other greens, because there's gaps in the plastic and around, so it's not very well protected at all. And these carrots are perfect. The greens might look a little rough right now, but most of that's really just because the light is getting blocked from the row cover. And we harvest these for the market and bunch them up, so we don't really care too much about the greens. But this just tells you how well protected the carrots are. So the root is what you want for carrots, and these roots are totally perfect. And there's no frost damage on the roots. I've grown carrots enough to where when you do have frost damage on the roots, the carrot itself root will expand and there'll be little gaps in there, and then it'll rot faster. These are totally perfect, and they are, in my experience, absolutely bomb proof. The real key is just making sure they're mature by your last 10-hour day and protecting them when you need to. And it's if you can grow carrots normally, it's really easy to do this. You just need to grow them in your greenhouse under double or up to 5 layers of protection. But the row cover is cheap. It's really worth it. And these carrots are also the sweetest carrots you're ever going to taste. They are absolute candy, because all carrots and a lot of these frost tender vegetables get sweeter the colder it gets, because the sugars in the plants concentrate to protect it from frost. That goes for all the crops we mentioned, plus kale and stuff like that. But carrots are the sweetest of them all. You're never experienced this if you've never had them. You can't get them in the store. They're just absolutely phenomenal, and you can grow a ton of them in a small space. This is about 10-15 feet of row behind me, and I would bet there is probably 45 to 50 pounds of these carrots behind me. And depends on how many carrots you eat with your family, but that is a lot of carrots that will last you. These carrots will be good like this probably till May. After that, they might start to regrow and bolt, and that'd be bad. You don't want that. But they're really, really cold hardy, and they're much easier to store this way too. You don't have to use a root cellar or anything. You just store them in the ground. So in Wyoming, we have to do it in a greenhouse with lots of protection. A lot of places I know you could just do this outside, but it's too cold here to do that. But if you manage the row covers right and get the timing right, this is one of my absolute favorite winter crops. I can't grow enough of it for my market. I need more and more greenhouse space every year to grow it, because everybody goes nuts for these things, just because they know you cannot buy these anywhere. So try these next time. All right, so the number one crop to grow through a below zero winter is something you might have guessed: spinach. This stuff is the most bomb-proof of anything we grow in the winter. It never fails. It is absolutely spectacular in terms of how tough it is to grow or to produce through -20 or -30 even. We had -30 last year, believe it or not. And it still survived and then kept growing a lot in February and into March, even April. And we even had one bed of spinach outside in our field, which is totally dark in the winter, that survived -30 and regrew in May. And so this is the toughest of all of the winter crops. It is delicious. It tastes absolutely like candy leaves. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just so incredibly sweet. It gets sweeter the colder it gets, and the more it thaws and survives through that. It just stays incredibly sweet. And it's one of the most versatile crops you can grow to produce food for you in the winter, because you've probably cooked with spinach before. You could cook with it. You can make salads with it. You could steam it and freeze it. There's a million recipes that call for spinach. Yes, you could replace spinach with other greens that we mentioned before, but a lot of times it just doesn't taste the same. Spinach, and the other thing that's cool about spinach is it's not a brassica like a lot of the other greens we've talked about. It's its own plant family. Well, it's not its own plant family, but it's another plant family. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's related to beets and Swiss chard, I think. But it is absolutely the most delicious of all the greens because of its sweetness, and will produce for you guaranteed every single winter if you do the production methods I mentioned before. If you get the crop produced by the last 10-hour day, or even a little after that is fine too, because I found that if I'm a little late on my planting date with spinach, it still will survive and grow to a full crop in maybe February or something. So this spinach was planted late September, and it actually didn't really mature by the last 10-hour day, but it's completely mature now. And I actually got a little bit of other spinach I need to harvest before we start moving on to this, but this stuff is going to be pumping in February, just like all the other greens. But it's an amazing crop that you really should grow in your winter garden. So there you have it. If you didn't believe that producing food year-round was possible, even in extreme cold climate like Wyoming, I just showed you 5 ways that you can do it. You just need a greenhouse, a low tunnel, and some row cover, and you'll be off to the races, producing your own greens, carrots, and you might even figure something else out that works. It's uncharted territory, so give this a shot your next growing season, and happy growing.